In the quiet embrace of the countryside, nestled between rolling hills and dense, whispering woods, stood an old Victorian house, its weathered facade hinting at stories untold. Clara had always dreamed of escaping the cacophony of city life, seeking solace in a place where she could rediscover herself. When she stumbled upon the estate during a weekend drive, it felt like fate. The house was a relic of another era, with its creaking floorboards and ornate moldings, drawing her in with an inexplicable allure. Upon moving in, Clara felt a mixture of excitement and unease. The air inside was heavy with dust and the faint scent of mildew, yet the charm of the place captivated her. She spent her first days unpacking boxes and arranging furniture. But as night fell, an unsettling silence enveloped the house. The stillness was profound, almost oppressive, as if it were waiting for something to happen. As she settled into her new life, Clara began to notice peculiarities that sent shivers down her spine. It started subtly, a flicker of movement from the corner of her eye, or the feeling of being watched when she stood alone in a room. One evening, while exploring the attic, she stumbled upon an antique painting of a woman dressed in Victorian garb. The eyes seemed to follow her as she moved about, an unnerving sensation that left her breathless. Days turned into weeks, and the strange occurrences multiplied. Clara found herself drawn deeper into the heart of the house. A small wooden box caught her attention one afternoon. A box adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to pulse with energy. Curiosity piqued. She opened it only to be greeted by a chilling melody that echoed through the empty halls, sending chills racing down her spine. The isolation began to weigh heavily on her mind. Shadows danced along the walls as dusk settled in. Whispers filled the air when no one else was around. She often heard footsteps above her, heavy and deliberate. Yet each time she ventured upstairs, she was met with silence and emptiness. The house felt alive, its very essence entwined with something dark and malevolent lurking just beneath the surface. Each night brought more terror. Clara's sleep became fractured. Nightmares bled into reality as she awoke to find herself staring into the darkness, convinced that someone, or something, was watching her from just beyond her reach. The feeling intensified until it became unbearable. She needed answers, but there was no one to turn to in this forsaken place. It wasn't long before her brother Mark grew concerned about Clara's mental state. His phone calls revealed a woman unraveling under pressure. He decided it was time to visit. As he drove down the winding road toward his sister's isolated refuge, he couldn't shake off a growing sense of dread, a premonition that something sinister awaited them both in that old house steeped in shadows. Little did they know that their fates were intertwined with dark secrets long buried within its walls. As the days passed in the old Victorian house, Clara's unease deepened. The whispers she heard at night became clearer, forming words that seemed to beckon her deeper into the shadows. The painting of the somber woman in the attic haunted her dreams, its eyes boring into her soul, as if urging her to uncover a truth buried long ago. One evening, after another restless night filled with unsettling dreams, Clara decided to explore further. She ventured into the forgotten corners of the house, drawn by an inexplicable force. Each room she entered felt charged with energy, remnants of a life once lived still echoing in the air. Dust motes danced like tiny spirits caught in the sunlight streaming through cracked windows. Her heart raced as she stumbled upon a hidden door behind a bookshelf in the library. With a gentle push, it creaked open, revealing a small room adorned with remnants of a previous occupant's life. Old photographs yellowed with age and furniture draped in sheets that seemed to shiver in anticipation. But it was the broken mirror hanging on the wall that captured her attention. When she gazed into it, she saw not just her reflection, but glimpses of another time. A woman dressed in the same Victorian garb as the figure in the painting. Her expression twisted in anguish. Clara recoiled, shaken to her core. As she turned to leave, a loud crash resonated from upstairs. The sound echoed through the empty house, reverberating in her chest like a death knell. Adrenaline surged through her veins as she felt compelled to investigate, despite every instinct telling her to flee. With each step up the staircase, Clara's heart pounded louder than before. The air grew thicker, suffocatingly oppressive, as she reached the second floor. Shadows flitted across the walls. Cold drafts whispered against her skin. Clara hesitated at the door to what she believed was the source of the disturbance. A room at the end of the hall that had been locked. When Clara hesitated at the door to what she believed was the source of the disturbance. A room at the end of the hall that had been locked when she moved in. With trembling hands, she pushed open the door. Inside lay remnants of what appeared to be an abandoned nursery. Dust-covered toys and crumbling wallpaper, depicting cheerful scenes that felt grotesque against the backdrop of her terror. In the corner stood an old rocking chair that swayed gently, although no wind stirred within those four walls. Suddenly, Clara felt a presence behind her. She spun around but found only emptiness. Panic threatened to overwhelm her as she heard soft laughter echoing through the room. Childlike, yet sinister. It was then that she knew. Whatever lingered here was not merely a figment of her imagination. Meanwhile, Mark arrived at his sister's home, dread settling heavily in his stomach as he approached the dilapidated structure. Clara's frantic phone calls had left him uneasy. He could sense something was amiss, even before stepping through the threshold. He found Clara pacing restlessly in the living room, eyes wide with fear. "Clara, what's going on?" he demanded, concern etching lines across his brow. "I can't explain it. There's something wrong with this place," she stammered, glancing nervously toward the hallway, where darkness seemed to gather like a living thing. After listening to Clara recount her experiences, the whispers, shadows, and strange occurrences, Mark's skepticism began to erode under the weight of her terror. He resolved to investigate further, determined to uncover whatever dark history clung to this house like cobwebs. As Mark delved into local law and spoke with townsfolk, who eyed him warily, he uncovered chilling stories about the house's previous occupants, tales of a cult that once thrived within its walls. They spoke of rituals performed under moonlit skies and malevolent spirits summoned from beyond. One elderly man warned him that those who entered seeking answers often found themselves trapped within their own nightmares. Armed with this newfound knowledge and fueled by concern for Clara's well-being, Mark searched through dusty attics and hidden corners until he stumbled upon an old diary belonging to one of the cult's leaders. A leather-bound book filled with frenzied writings about summoning dark forces and binding spirits within human vessels. The final entries chilled him to his core. They hinted at a catastrophic ritual gone awry, one that had unleashed horrors far beyond their control. As he shared his findings with Clara, their shared terror solidified their bond against an unseen enemy lurking just beyond their perception. But before they could devise a plan or find solace in each other's company, an icy gust swept through the house, a warning of what was yet to come. Shadows deepened around them as reality began to warp. Objects rattled ominously while echoes of distant laughter filled their ears once more. As fear coiled tightly around their hearts, they realized that they were not merely guests in this house, but unwilling participants in an ancient game played by forces they could scarcely comprehend. The chilling atmosphere thickened as they prepared for confrontation with whatever darkness awaited them within these cursed walls. The air thickened with an unnatural chill as Clara and Mark stood together, hearts racing in unison. The house seemed to breathe, its walls pulsating with a sinister energy that enveloped them like a shroud. They exchanged frantic glances, both aware that the time for hesitation had passed. "Clara, we need to find a way out," Mark urged, his voice barely rising above the eerie laughter echoing through the halls. The diary mentioned a way to seal whatever was unleashed here. Clara nodded, determination flashing in her eyes. There must be something in that nursery, something connected to the rituals they performed. They made their way back to the abandoned room, each step forward feeling like a descent into madness. As they entered the nursery, Clara felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over her. The rocking chair continued its macabre sway, and the once cheerful wallpaper now seemed to peel away from the walls like flesh from bone. In the corner lay the broken mirror that had haunted her since she first laid eyes on it. "Look," Mark exclaimed, pointing toward the mirror. It shimmered with a strange light, reflecting not just their images, but glimpses of spectral figures, twisted faces of those who had suffered at the hands of the cult long ago. Clara approached cautiously, entranced by the visions swirling within. "What if this is how we can close the door?" she whispered, hope igniting within her chest despite the encroaching darkness. Mark rifled through the scattered toys and debris, searching for anything that might help them perform a counter-ritual. He found an old wooden doll, the same one he'd seen in one of the photos from the diary, and handed it to Clara. This might be significant. With trembling hands, Clara held the doll close to her heart. "We need to channel whatever energy is trapped here," she said, recalling snippets from the diary about binding spirits with objects of significance. They began to chant softly, words drawn from their memories of folklore and urban legends intertwined with what little they understood of ancient rites. As their voices mingled in the air, shadows coalesced around them, dark figures writhing in agitation. Suddenly, a deafening roar erupted from within the walls, shaking the very foundation of the house. The temperature plummeted. Breath turned into mist as malevolent energy surged toward them, furious at being disturbed. "Don't stop," Mark shouted over the cacophony. They pressed on, voices rising in urgency as they focused on sealing away the dark spirits that had been summoned so long ago. As they chanted louder, reality began to distort further. The walls warped and twisted as if trying to consume them whole. The once familiar nursery morphed into a nightmarish landscape filled with anguished faces and grasping hands reaching out from the mirror's depths. In that moment of chaos, Clara felt a connection, a surge of warmth radiating from within her as she envisioned binding these spirits once and for all. "I won't let you take us," she screamed defiantly. With one final push of willpower, Clara thrust the doll toward the mirror as she cried out one last incantation. A brilliant flash illuminated the room before plunging it into darkness. Silence fell abruptly. Then came an ear-splitting crack as the mirror shattered into countless shards that scattered like stars across the floor. The oppressive weight lifted almost instantly. A serene calmness enveloped them as soft light filtered through the remnants of shattered glass. Clara and Mark stood breathless amidst the ruins, feeling an unfamiliar sense of peace wash over them. But then they heard it. The soft laughter returning from somewhere deep within the house. It echoed like distant chimes carried on a breeze, but tinged with a darker edge. They exchanged terrified looks as realization dawned. Though they had sealed many spirits away, some had escaped and would forever linger within these walls. With newfound resolve, Clara took Mark's hand tightly in hers. "We have to leave this place," she said firmly. They rushed down the stairs, navigating through shadows that writhed and shifted at their heels. As they burst through the front door into daylight, an unsettling tranquility settled around them. A sense that while they had survived this encounter, they would forever carry its mark. The old Victorian house loomed behind them like a sentinel guarding its secrets. They knew they could never return. But even as they walked away hand in hand, whispers floated on the wind, a reminder that some evils are not easily vanquished, and that darkness can always find a way to beckon back those who dare to uncover its truths. In leaving behind that cursed home, Clara and Mark realized their lives would forever be intertwined with its haunting legacy, a chilling reminder of what lurked just beyond reality's veil, and an unending cautionary tale whispered among those who dared tread too close to shadows lurking in forgotten places. As Clara and Mark stepped away from the Victorian house, their hearts raced, but the weight of the experience pressed heavily on their minds. They walked in silence, the sun casting long shadows behind them, as if reluctant to let them go. Each step felt like a betrayal to the horrors they had left behind, a promise unfulfilled, and a darkness still lingering in the air. Once they reached their car parked on the gravel path, Clara turned back for one last glance at the house. Its windows glared like hollow eyes, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw the silhouette of the Victorian woman from the painting standing in an upstairs window, watching them leave. A shiver ran down her spine as she quickly turned away, shaking off the feeling of being watched. "Let's get out of here," Mark urged, his voice taut with unease. As they drove down the winding road, Clara couldn't shake off the sense that they had only scratched the surface of what lay hidden within those walls. She stared out at the passing trees, their gnarled branches reaching toward her like skeletal fingers. The drive back to town felt surreal. The landscape was bathed in a golden light that contrasted starkly with the darkness they had just escaped. Yet, even amidst this beauty, Clara could feel an undercurrent of dread tugging at her thoughts. What if they hadn't truly escaped? What if whatever had been summoned still lurked nearby, waiting for them to let their guard down? Arriving home did little to ease her mind. Mark parked in front of her small cottage and glanced at her with concern etched across his features. "Do you think we should tell someone? The police? Or maybe a paranormal group?" Clara shook her head vehemently. "What would we say? That we were haunted by shadows and whispers? They'd think we were crazy." Mark sighed heavily as he stepped out of the car and joined her on the porch. "I just feel like there's more to uncover," he said slowly. "That diary, it didn't end abruptly without reason." Inside, Clara tried to distract herself by making tea, while Mark rifled through his backpack for the diary he had brought back with him, a tangible reminder of their ordeal. The steam curled upward from the kettle. She sensed a shift in the atmosphere around her. It felt charged, almost electric. "Here it is," Mark called from the living room. He sat cross-legged on the floor, poring over the pages once more. The flickering light cast ominous shadows across his face as he read aloud snippets that sent chills down Clara's spine. The final ritual must be performed under a blood moon, when the veil between worlds is thinnest, His voice trailed off as he flipped through more pages filled with frantic scrawls and sketches of symbols that looked strangely familiar. "What are you thinking?" Clara asked hesitantly, leaning against the doorframe. "I can't help but feel that whatever happened in that house is connected to something larger," Mark replied, his brow furrowed in concentration. "There are references to other locations, places where similar rituals took place." Clara frowned. "You mean there could be more houses like ours? More cults?" Mark nodded slowly, his fingers tracing over a crude drawing, depicting a map dotted with strange symbols scattered across their region. "If we could find these places, maybe we could understand what happened better." The prospect terrified Clara, yet curiosity gnawed at her insides like an insatiable beast. She moved closer to where Mark sat and looked over his shoulder at the map. "Do you think it's safe?" she whispered. "Safe? I don't know," Mark admitted quietly. "But I think it's necessary if we want to put this behind us." Clara hesitated, but felt an undeniable pull toward uncovering more truths about what had haunted her so profoundly during her time in that house. After all, darkness thrived on ignorance. Perhaps knowledge was their only weapon against whatever had been unleashed. With newfound determination tinged with apprehension, they began their research together over several days, poring over old newspapers and local archives while combing through online forums dedicated to paranormal investigations. Each discovery deepened their understanding of not only their own experience but also revealed a disturbing pattern of disappearances and tragedies tied to locations marked on Mark's map. As they delved deeper into these stories, Clara couldn't shake off feelings of dread creeping ever closer, like shadows gathering at dusk before nightfall fully enveloped them. One evening, as they were sifting through old photographs from town records showing eerie gatherings outside decrepit buildings reminiscent of their own Victorian home, Clara noticed something chilling. One of the photos captured an event occurring decades ago outside a structure bearing an uncanny resemblance to their former dwelling. "Mark, look at this," she exclaimed breathlessly as she pointed at an image depicting hooded figures encircling a blazing fire beneath a full moon. Mark leaned closer, studying it intently before realization dawned on him. This was taken in front of our house. Clara felt ice trickle down her spine as an overwhelming sense of foreboding settled over them both. If they were performing rituals there, then what if they never really stopped? "What do you mean?" Mark asked cautiously. "It's possible that whatever entity was summoned might have lingered," she murmured thoughtfully, piecing together fragments from both their experiences and history lessons learned during their investigation. What if it wasn't just about sealing spirits, but also keeping them contained? The thought hung heavy in the air like fog rolling in from unseen depths as they contemplated what lay ahead. An exploration fraught with danger yet essential for understanding how far-reaching this malevolence might stretch beyond just one house. Driven by instinct rather than logic, or perhaps blinded by fear, the siblings resolved to follow each lead on Mark's map until they uncovered every dark secret woven into its fabric, even if it meant returning to places that sent shivers racing down their spines. And so began their journey, a quest not merely for knowledge, but survival against forces unknown lurking at every turn, shadows whispering promises too enticing, yet laced with venomous intent. Weeks passed as they traveled through remote towns and forgotten roads leading them deeper into eerie landscapes suffused with mystery and malice. Abandoned buildings stood sentinel like silent witnesses echoing tales long forgotten, while nature reclaimed its hold on human folly. left unchecked behind crumbling facades. In one particularly unsettling location, an old church rumored to have once hosted secretive gatherings, Clara felt an overwhelming sense of déjà vu wash over her as she stepped inside its shadowy interior. The air felt heavy here. Dust motes danced lazily in shafts of fading light, filtering through stained glass windows, depicting saints long forsaken by faith or time itself. A cruel irony considering what had transpired within these walls centuries past. As Clara explored further into its depths alongside Mark, something shifted within her. A flicker at first, but quickly growing into something more profound. A connection binding her spirit inexplicably to this place steeped in sorrow and loss. It wasn't until they reached a hidden alcove adorned with grotesque carvings depicting scenes reminiscent of those found within cult lore that everything began falling into place. Images portraying sacrifices made under blood, moons echoed through time like ripples across water. A grotesque reminder not just confined within history, but alive now even after centuries spent gathering dust among these remnants, left behind by those who dared tread too close toward darkness without understanding its price. "Do you feel that?" Clara whispered breathlessly, while gazing at one particularly vivid carving, showing hooded figures surrounding what appeared to be an altar-stained crimson. A sight all too familiar, yet foreign enough to send chills racing along every nerve ending throughout her body. Mark nodded slowly. Unease radiated off him like heat waves shimmering above asphalt on hot summer days, an instinctive understanding settling deep within them both, that whatever lay ahead would demand sacrifices far greater than anything imaginable should either attempt tampering recklessly with forces best left undisturbed, since time immemorial itself began ticking onward into infinity without regard for lives lost along its path. "We need to leave," he urged suddenly, urgency filling his tone despite reservations lingering beneath surface calmness, displayed outwardly between clenched jaws, set firmly against uncertainty roiling just beneath skin's surface, threatening eruption at any moment, should circumstances dictate otherwise entirely different outcomes than intended upon arrival here, today, seeking mere answers, instead finding themselves standing now amidst echoes, haunting past, still echoing loudly throughout present realities, intertwining seamlessly, while drawing them inexorably closer toward inevitable confrontations looming just beyond horizon line, barely visible, yet palpable enough, already resonating through atmosphere, thickening even further, each passing second spent lingering longer than desired within vicinity, plagued by memories resurrected unwillingly from graves long buried beneath layers dust, piled high atop forgotten histories, waiting patiently until summoned forth once more into light, revealing truths hidden away too long, left unrevealed, though never truly gone either, despite absence lingering around corners, waiting patiently until summoned forth again. "I can't shake this feeling," Clara admitted as fear crept back into focus, drawing tight around heart-constricting breath itself, slowly becoming harder, navigate through oppressive atmosphere, thickening steadily surrounding them, both pressing against every inch space occupied momentarily, trapped between choices made earlier, leading now toward uncertain futures, stretching endlessly onward without end in sight, guiding decisions made henceforth onward, eternally entwined destinies awaiting culmination, inevitable outcome birthed from seeds planted countless years prior, nurtured carefully until ripe enough, finally bear fruit, now demanding harvest, reap urgently, lest consequences arise unforeseen, spiraling uncontrollably, thereafter become boundless entrapment awaiting anyone foolish enough. Meddle deeper still, the trepidation weighing heavily upon shoulders, laden burdens carried silently through darkest nights, spent wandering aimlessly beneath pale moonlight, illuminating paths obscured long since forgotten. Those paths tangled, intricately woven together, forming tapestry-rich history interlaced within threads. Delicate weaving, intricate patterns revealing glimpses past, intermingling seamlessly, present shaping future determined courses, chosen carefully navigating treacherous waters, fraught perilous risks. Taken willingly, despite knowing dangers lurking closely. As they stood in the hushed alcove of the old church, Clara felt the walls closing in on her. Each heartbeat echoed like a drum, resonating with the weight of history that pressed against her chest. Mark's eyes darted around, scanning for any sign of movement, any hint that they were not alone in this forsaken place. "Clara," he whispered urgently, "we should stick together. The legends spoke of protective wards here. If we can find them, maybe we can shield ourselves from whatever is watching us." She nodded, though unease rippled through her veins. The air felt electric, charged with something ancient and restless. They split up cautiously, each step echoing ominously in the silence, as they searched for symbols or markings that might offer some semblance of protection. Clara moved toward a series of faded frescoes lining the walls, their colors muted by time, but still hauntingly beautiful. They depicted scenes of worship, figures kneeling before a towering entity cloaked in shadow. The expressions on their faces were those of ecstasy and terror intertwined, a portrayal of devotion that sent chills down her spine. "Mark, over here," she called, her voice shaky, yet filled with urgency. He hurried over, his expression shifting from focus to concern as he examined the frescoes. "What do you see?" he asked, leaning closer to inspect the artistry. "Look at the hands," Clara pointed out. "They're reaching towards something, or someone. It feels like they're pleading." Her stomach churned at the thought of what these people had sacrificed to gain favor from whatever dark entity lurked beyond their comprehension. Mark traced the lines with his fingers, brushing away dust that had settled over centuries. "There has to be a connection between these images and what we encountered in the house," he mused. "Perhaps they use similar rituals." As Clara stepped back to take in the entire mural, a sudden gust of wind swept through the church, causing shadows to flicker and dance along the walls. Mark instinctively reached for her arm, pulling her close as an unsettling energy coursed through the air. "It's just a draft," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. But deep down, both knew it was more than that, a warning from beyond perhaps. They exchanged glances filled with unspoken fear and determination. They couldn't let this darkness claim them too. Searching deeper within the church's recesses, they stumbled upon an old altar at its heart, its surface stained with dark splotches that hinted at rituals long past. Surrounding it were remnants of candles and offerings left behind, wilted flowers and small trinkets meant to appease whatever dwelled beyond. "This must be where they perform their ceremonies," Clara whispered, awe mixed with dread washing over her. She approached cautiously, as if drawn by an unseen force compelling her forward. Mark hesitated but followed her lead. He sensed something significant here, an energy that seemed to pulse beneath their feet. As they reached the altar's edge, Clara spotted carvings etched into its surface, symbols mirroring those found within the diary. "Mark, look," she exclaimed excitedly despite her fear. "These symbols, they're identical." He leaned closer, squinting at the intricate designs etched into stone, a language both foreign and familiar, intertwining like threads woven together across time itself, telling stories hidden away too long forgotten now, begging for recognition once more. Suddenly, a loud crash resonated from somewhere deeper within the church, a sound that reverberated through their bones, jolting them back into reality with stark clarity. What was that? Mark asked breathlessly, adrenaline surging through him as they instinctively moved closer together. I don't know, Clara replied shakily, panic creeping into her voice as shadows shifted ominously around them once again, drawing nearer, beckoning forth unseen horrors lurking just beyond perception, waiting patiently until summoned forth once more into light, revealing truths hidden too long concealed beneath layers dust piled high atop forgotten histories waiting patiently until summoned forth again. Let's get out of here, Mark urged vehemently, grasping Clara's hand tightly as they turned toward the exit, but found their path obstructed. Thick tendrils of darkness coiling around doorways like serpents ready to strike should either dare venture forth beyond confines imposed by ancient forces long since lost control over, but refusing yield ground, willingly still clinging tightly onto those foolish enough trespass recklessly upon sacred grounds, steeped heavily laden burdens carried silently through darkest nights, spent wandering aimlessly beneath pale moonlight, illuminating paths obscured long since forgotten. Clara steeled herself against rising terror, threatening consume rational thought altogether, instead focusing inward, drawing strength from memories shared, moments spent together, forging bonds unbreakable, forged under duress, testing limits, previously thought impossible, facing insurmountable odds stacked high against them, both daring challenge fate itself head-on, without hesitation, despite knowing dangers lurking closely awaiting opportunity strike when least expected, rather than retreating into shadows, letting fear dictate choices made henceforth onward eternally entwined destinies, awaiting culmination, inevitable outcome birthed from seeds planted countless years prior, nurtured carefully until ripe enough finally bear fruit, now demanding harvest reaped urgently lest consequences arise unforeseen, spiraling uncontrollably, thereafter become boundless entrapment awaiting anyone foolish enough, meddle deeper still. Together, she said firmly, meeting Mark's gaze with determination, igniting within those depths, shimmering brightly against encroaching darkness, swirling around them, threatening consume everything whole, leaving nothing behind. No trace remnants left behind, etched memory forevermore marked indelibly upon spirits traversing paths, unknown, seeking solace amidst chaos, reigniting hope flickering dimly, like candle flames dancing bravely against winds howling fiercely, battering against fragile forms, clinging desperately onto existence itself, while battling shadows whispering promises too enticing yet laced venomous intent, wrapping tightly around hearts, constricting slowly, squeezing tighter still, until breath escaped completely, vanishing without trace whatsoever, swallowed whole by malevolence unleashed far beyond comprehension. Minds struggling grasp, understand fully implications, bearing down relentlessly, pressing upon shoulders, laden burdens carried silently. They pushed forward, despite growing dread coiling tightly around hearts, constricting breath itself, slowly becoming harder. Navigate through oppressive atmosphere, thickening steadily surrounding them both, pressing against every inch space occupied, momentarily trapped between choices made earlier, leading now toward uncertain futures, stretching endlessly onward without end in sight, guiding decisions made henceforth onward, eternally entwined destinies awaiting culmination, inevitable outcome birthed from seeds planted countless years prior, nurtured carefully until ripe enough, finally bear fruit, now demanding harvest reaped urgently, lest consequences arise unforeseen, spiraling uncontrollably, thereafter become boundless entrapment awaiting anyone foolish enough to meddle deeper still. As they neared what appeared to be a side exit, partially obscured by fallen debris, cluttering pathway, leading outside world, beckoning brightly illuminated sunshine, spilling warmth invitingly cascading down upon weary souls, seeking refuge from chilling embrace, darkness surrounding them, ever tightening grip, threatening consume entirely, leaving nothing behind except echoes lingering faintly, reminding all who dared tread upon sacred grounds, steeped heavily laden burdens, carried silently through darkest nights, spent wandering aimlessly beneath pale moonlight illuminating paths, obscured long since forgotten, waiting patiently until summoned forth again, revealing truths, hidden too long concealed beneath layers, dust piled high atop forgotten histories, waiting patiently until summoned forth once more. With resolve unyielding, fueled by desperation, born necessity escaping confines, shackled tightly against mortal flesh, demanding liberation sought, desperately reclaim lives lived fully embracing freedom, found deep within yearning spirits, longing soar above constraints imposed by earthly ties, binding tightly unto realms, known only shadows lurking just beyond reach, tempting fate daring challenge belief systems entrenched deeply rooted throughout generations passed down. Whisper tales, cautionary forewarnings heedlessly ignored, ultimately leading demise confronting forces unknown, lurking at edges consciousness, threatening pull undercurrents, dark swirling eddies drawing closer still, inviting surrender, yielding willingly, finally succumbing without resistance whatsoever, lost forevermore amidst chaos, rising ever higher, consuming everything whole, leaving nothing behind, no trace remnants left behind, etched memory forevermore marked indelibly upon spirits traversing paths unknown, seeking solace amidst turmoil, reigniting hope flickering dimly like candle flames dancing bravely against winds, howling fiercely, battering against fragile forms, clinging desperately onto existence itself, while battling shadows, whispering promises too enticing yet laced venomous intent, wrapping tightly around hearts, constricting, slowly squeezing tighter still, until breath escaped completely vanishing without trace whatsoever, swallowed whole by malevolence unleashed far beyond comprehension. Minds struggling grasp, understand fully implications, bearing down relentlessly, pressing upon shoulders, laden burdens carried silently. The moment they burst through the side exit into sunlight was euphoric, yet bittersweet. A reminder that while escape had been achieved momentarily, safety remained elusive forever, intertwined destinies, weaving intricate patterns, connecting fate sealed long ago, beckoning return inevitably towards darker corners, awaiting discovery, unveiling secrets buried beneath layers. Time yearning recognition despite refusal, acknowledged truths hidden too long concealed amid shadows, cast forth relentless pursuit, seeking solace amid chaos, reigning supreme, ruling over lives lived recklessly, unaware stakes raised perilously high, risking everything fought hard, obtain what had been lost along the way struggling, regain footing, slipping further downward, each passing second spent lingering longer than desired, within vicinity plagued memories, resurrected unwillingly from graves, long buried beneath layers dust piled high atop forgotten histories, waiting patiently until summoned forth again, revealing truths hidden too long, concealed beneath layers dust piled high atop forgotten histories, waiting patiently until summoned forth again, unveiling secrets buried beneath layers, time-yearning recognition despite refusal, acknowledged truths, hidden too long, concealed amid shadows, cast forth relentless pursuit, seeking solace amid chaos, reigning supreme, ruling over lives lived recklessly, unaware stakes raised perilously high, risking everything fought hard, obtain what had been lost along the way struggling, regained footing, slipping further downward each passing second, spent lingering longer than desired, within vicinity plagued memories, resurrected unwillingly from graves, long buried beneath layers, dust piled high atop forgotten histories, waiting patiently until summoned forth again, unveiling secrets buried beneath layers, time-yearning recognition, despite refusal, acknowledged truths hidden too long, concealed amid shadows, cast forth relentless pursuit, seeking solace amid chaos, reigning supreme, ruling over lives lived, recklessly unaware, stakes raised, perilously high, risking everything, fought hard, obtain what had been lost, a long way struggling, regain footing, slipping further downward. Each passing second spent lingering longer than desired, within vicinity plagued memories, resurrected unwillingly from graves, long buried beneath layers, dust piled high atop forgotten histories, waiting patiently until summoned forth again, unveiling secrets buried beneath layers, time. As Clara and Mark stood in the warm embrace of sunlight, a profound silence enveloped them. Yet the shadows of their experiences lingered like an unshakable spectre. They had escaped the grasp of darkness, but its echoes would forever haunt their memories, a chilling reminder of the malevolent forces that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. With each step away from the church, they carried with them not only the weight of their harrowing journey, but also a newfound understanding of the thin line separating light from dark. They had uncovered truths that could never be forgotten, binding their fates to a legacy steeped in ancient horror. As they drove away, the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows that intertwined with their past, a testament to their survival and a warning that some doors are best left unopened.